This week, RDP servers even can hack client devices. Roughly 500,000 Ubiquiti devices may be affected by a flaw already exploited in the wild. A crypto exchange in limbo after the founder dies with the password. Home DNA kit company says it's working with the FBI. Outlaw Shellbot has infected Linux servers to mine Monero. Apple Siri Shortcuts feature a vulnerability, which is pretty interesting, or maybe not. We'll see. Code execution flaws are found in LibreOffice and OpenOffice. Google's new Chrome extension warns you about if you're going to enter a stolen password. Mitigations against Mimikatz attacks, and Google patches a PNG image bug. It was a busy week for news, so buckle up. In our expert commentary, David Pearson from Awake Security, he joins us for expert commentary on how Japan is performing an IoT pen test on their public IPs in the country. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night.
Welcome to Hack Naked News, episode number 206 for February 5th, 2019. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. A reminder for everyone that the RSA Conference 2019 is the place to be for the latest in cybersecurity data innovation and thought leadership. We did an interview with conference organizers yesterday on Business Security Weekly. Make sure you check that out. It was very interesting to hear about all of the wonderful events that are happening. Everything from technical training to innovation sandboxes and all kinds of stuff. Of course, March 4th through the 8th in San Francisco is where RSA will be held. You can go to rsaconference.com/securityweekly-US19. Use the discount code 5U9SWFD to get $100 off a full conference pass. And now, the security news for this week. RDP servers can hack client devices. According to researchers, it seems there was only one vulnerability in Microsoft's RDP implementation that was discovered recently, and that is the clipboard sharing issue, which Checkpoint researchers discovered, and there's a video on their website about it. Again, you can find all the show notes at wiki.securityweekly.com. A lot of the stories you're going to want to go back and read because there were so many this week, very interesting. So that clipboard issue is disabled by default in Microsoft's RDP implementation. All of the other vulnerabilities are related to open source projects that are implementing the remote desktop protocol. The article states that more than 2,000 vulnerabilities have been discovered by security experts in popular implementations of the RDP protocol, including flaws that allowed malicious RDP server to hack a device running the client RDP software. The FBI has warned recently that attacks involving RDP have been on the rise in the past couple of years, fueled by RDP access sold on the dark web. Checkpoint Technologies have conducted an analysis of free RDP, RDesktop, and remote desktop connection software shipped with Windows. They've identified a total of 25 security holes, including 16 that have been described as major. Roughly 500,000 Ubiquiti devices may be affected by a flaw already exploited in the wild, according to some. So according to researchers, this is a denial of service vulnerability. But Ubiquiti says otherwise. Who do you believe? I'm not so sure. I tend to side with the researchers, as Ubiquiti forums have been discussing this issue for some time. Now, according to the security expert, the devices are already affected by a denial of service flaw that attackers are attempting to trigger. Now, security experts at Rapid7 revealed that they were monitoring suspicious traffic headed for this UDP port 10,001 and have noticed an uptick in scanning for at least a year. Ubiquiti is now aware of the issue and is currently working on a firmware update that will address it anyway, but it's trying to downplay the vulnerability. A statement from Ubiquiti states, there has been some discussion lately about a bug in Air OS which can result in management access to the Air devices becoming inoperable until these devices are rebooted. The issue appears to be caused by external access to Air OS devices using port 10001, that is UDP as far as I've read. As a temporary workaround for this issue while it's being investigated and resolved by the development team, network operators can block port 10001 at the network perimeter. Of course, I don't think it's a good idea to hang your Air OS-based devices from Ubiquiti out there on the internet. Again, that's just my friendly advice. They also state that, to their knowledge, this issue cannot be used to gain control of network devices or create a distributed denial of service attack. So please don't try it. Be like, oh, look, I launched a denial of service attack just to prove them wrong. Please block it on your firewall, apply updates, and do your testing in a lab with permission. A crypto exchange is in limbo after the founders died with the password. This is actually one of my wife's greatest fears, is that I die with all of the passwords that I had forgot to write down for her or something. Some say this could have been a hoax. However, we have no evidence to support that theory. Only what has been published on the internet. And what I read on the internet today was that customers of Canadian cryptocurrency exchange Quadriga CX, that's how I'm pronouncing it, Quadriga CX. That's what I'm going with. If it's pronounced some other way, well, you can correct me later. Quadriga CX is missing over 250 million Canadian dollars in flat and virtual currency, a total of around 190 million US dollars after its founder died without telling anyone the password for his storage wallet. Quadriga CX enabled users to, of course, trade flat currency and cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and others. Gary Cotton, the 30-year-old founder of the Vancouver-based exchange, passed away in India on December 9th, 2018, due to complications from Crohn's disease, according to reports. In an affidavit to the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia, his partner, Jennifer Robertson, explained that cryptocurrencies had been stored in a code wallet that was under his sole control. Or she's moving off to the island in Fiji that he bought later on. I'm just saying that's a conspiracy theory and not anything based in fact. The Home DNA Kit company says it's working with the FBI. This is the balance between privacy and the law. It's a struggle. It's real. In this case, Family Tree DNA, one of the larger makers of at-home genealogy tests, I hope I said that right, I can't really see that well because I'm old. They've disclosed it's quietly been giving the FBI access to its database of 1 million DNA profiles to help solve violent crime. Investigators' use of public genealogy databases is nothing new. Law enforcement agencies have been using them for years to track down really, really bad people. So police arrested Joseph James D'Angelo on suspicion of being the Golden State Killer. Allegedly, the man is responsible for more than 50 rapes, 12 murders, and more than 120 burglaries across the state of California during the 70s and 80s. An Outlaw Shellbot infects Linux servers to mine for Monero. My pronunciation is terrible today. I apologize. Monero, thank you. Outlaw is the group that's distributing this and not an English word as you might think. However, on Tuesday, the JASC Special Ops Research Team disclosed details of the attack, which appeared to focus on seizing infrastructure resources to support illicit Monero mining activities. The campaign uses a refined version of Shellbot, a Trojan which carves a tunnel between infected systems and command and control servers operated by threat actors. The backdoor is able to collect system and personal data, terminate and run tasks, download additional payloads, open remote command line shells, send stolen information to a C2 channel, and receive additional malware payloads from controllers. There's a lot of duplicates in there in its functionality. I realize that, but it does a lot of stuff and it makes people money. But we found it, so hopefully we can make it go away until the next one comes up. Apple's Siri Shortcut feature is vulnerable to abuse, according to researchers from IBM. Someone had or a bunch of people had their evil hat on when they discovered this Siri flaw. As they state, using Siri, using a native shortcut functionality, a script could be created to speak ransom demands to the device's owner using the Siri's voice. Explains a blog post from John Kuhn, the senior threat researcher at IBM, who had his evil hat on. Good job, John. He goes on to say that to lend more credibility to the scheme, attackers can automate data collection from the device and have it send back the user's current physical address, IP address, contents of the clipboard, stored pictures or videos, contact information, and more. This data can be displayed to the user, convincing them that the attacker can make use of it unless they pay the ransom. A code execution flaw has been found in LibreOffice and OpenOffice. All of the targeted user needs to do is open a malicious ODT file and move the mouse anywhere in the document. The security expert who published the vulnerability in a blog post detailed his findings and published a video on how the attack works. While the post and proof of concept code focuses on LibreOffice, the attack can be adapted for OpenOffice as well. The researcher says both Linux and Windows systems are impacted. The vulnerability is being tracked. Get your pens out. CVE-2018-16858 has been described as a path traversal issue that allows an attacker to execute Python files located anywhere on the target system. Now, the issue was fixed in LibreOffice with the release of version 6.07 and 6.1.3. OpenOffice developers have been notified, but they have not yet released a patch. Until a fix becomes available, you can disable the Python support by removing or renaming pythonscript.py file in the installation folder if you're so inclined. Unless, of course, you use Python in your LibreOffice, in which case you're not going to do that and probably get owned. I'm not sure. In any case, Google's new Chrome extension warns you about stolen passwords. The password checkup tool, which the tech giant released today, actually warns you if the username and password you're using were stolen in any breaches, and then prompts you to change your password if they were. Even data breaches from more than a decade ago, of course, can still hurt the victims if you haven't changed your password. A collection of 2.2 billion stolen credentials dating as far back as 2008 is, of course, floating around the hacker forums. Although when approached, I believe that's the one where they said, oh, yeah, that data is kind of old. I've got newer password breaches. So your passwords are likely out there. Make sure you change them. Because cyber criminals, this is what the article said, are counting on you being lazy. That's right. So don't be lazy. It's good life advice. Mitigations against Mimikatz Style Attacks. This is a great article covering defenses to Mimikatz in-memory attacks from the SANS ISC incident handler Rob Vanderbrink says that Mimikatz, of course, parses credentials out of LSAS in memory and goes on to describe a number of different defensive configuration settings that you can do to help thwart this attack, as there's multiple attack vectors included in Mimikatz and multiple ways, of course, to then defend against it as well. He talks about the Emotet strain of malware. It gains credentials and persistence, often passes control to other malware, and then it's pretty easy to bypass AV, and quotes research from none other than our friends at Black Hills Information Security about bypassing antivirus to run Mimikatz. The link to that research is in the show notes. Google, this is our last story, has patched a critical PNG image bug. The most severe of these issues is a critical security vulnerability in the Android framework that could allow remote attackers using specially crafted PNG files to execute arbitrary code within the context of a privileged user. There's no reports of this being exploited in the wild. I expect this may happen once a patch is released, but it depends on how this vulnerability is exploited. Do I have to text it to someone? Can they open it in a web browser? The article seems to hint that it can be exploited in a browser. As they state, an attacker exploiting the flaw could remotely take over a vulnerable Android device by sending a booby-trapped image. I get different kinds of images with the word anyway, or tricking a user into following a malicious link sent via a mobile messaging service, which means if it's a link, I could open it up in my browser, it could render the image and could exploit my phone. I didn't find any other information or details about this vulnerability just yet. Hopefully more will come to light once the patch is released, or it's out there and I just haven't found it, in which case if you find it, make sure you send it to us because we love exploits. With that, we'll take a short break, come back with expert commentary from our fine friends at Awake Security. Stay tuned.
Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/PSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter.
Welcome back, everyone, to Hack Naked News. If you're interested in quality over quantity and having meaningful conversations, rather than just a badge scan, join us April 1st through the 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort. InfoSec 2019 will be the place to be. Lots of fun going on out there. You can use the discount code OS19-SecWeek. Get 15% off. Make sure you register. Lots of great talks. I will be presenting as well as several others on some really awesome topics. You can get the full agenda on the InfoSec World website. Now I'd like to welcome David Pearson, the head of threat research at Awake Security. They're a sponsor of the show. You can find out more about Awake Security by visiting securityweekly.com/awake. Today, Dave is going to talk about the Summer Olympics and how that ties into what Japan has announced, that it will scan people's IoT devices and see if they have a default password and then notify their ISP, as far as I understand it. To tell us more, Dave Pearson from Awake Security. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having us. For having me. So I wanted to talk about this story a little bit. Japan put out a press release, I guess, pretty recently that there was they're going to do a pen test on 200 million public IPs for Japan and pretty much find all the IoT things that are bad. Default passwords, admin credentials that are weak, etc., and go ahead and report those to the ISPs and then to the consumers themselves. So it's a pretty interesting story. You know, I haven't really come across something like this being so publicly announced before. And I wanted to dig into a little bit. The article that I believe you have in the show notes talks a bit about how the 2020 Olympics may be one of the reasons why we saw some of the attacks that happened before the previous Olympics.
Now, Dave, I'm sorry, I don't follow mainstream news as closely as I should. I'm assuming the Summer Olympics for 2020 are being held in Japan. Is that why?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes.
That's okay. No, it's fine. Everyone else knew that. I'm really slow when it comes to mainstream news.
No worries. Yeah. So the 2020 Olympics in Japan. The theory is, okay, maybe they're going to help that setup be secure, right? Keep people from causing any problems in the stadiums, in the city around it, etc. And it doesn't really hold a lot of water once you start digging into it. So to start off with, this kind of pen test is focused on consumer IoT devices, and they're focused in Japan, right? Because it's the Japanese government. Now, everybody knows that you don't need to be local to, if you're worried about a distributed denial of service attack or something like that, you don't need to be within Japan to cause that to happen. So unless they're going to block all the traffic from the rest of the world, which obviously wouldn't work, it's not going to stop any sort of attack like that happening. So I don't really buy that particular example of a possible reason.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. And the other thing, now that you say that, is in reverse. If I'm a U.S. company and I've got a data center in Japan, and now they're scanning my device, but I'm a U.S. company. And then what are the other law? And I know you're not a lawyer, right? But we were talking about this before the show. The other is, in Japan, is that legal for the government to scan? Is it to other people's devices? And by scan, we mean like test login credentials. So that's obviously a different step from pinging a device or connecting to a port on a device. but then logging into a device, those are three different activities that your lawyers may look at differently, right? And then, of course, there's international law, and then there's international business kind of law if I've owned the device, but it's in Japan. I just think it brings up really interesting questions that I don't think you or I really want to answer, but I think they're interesting to bring up and talk about.
Yeah, they're fantastic points, and certainly when you're dealing with an entire nation, it's really hard to deal with all of those different problems and not cause issues with some party or another. So I really have no idea how they're going to handle that.
Well, and the other thing too, David, to that point is, I manage and maintain networks. There are nowhere near as many devices as an entire country. And like sometimes I'm like, oh, that password's the default. Yeah, we got to change that. So it's a scale issue too.
Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit as well. But okay, so pretend that it's not the consumer devices. Pretend that it's the infrastructure. You're trying to affect a change locally and black out the city, or cause the infrastructure not to work. Maybe there's a little bit more chance that that's realistic. But if I were trying to stop that sort of attack as the Japanese government, why would I be doing the attack 15 plus months in advance? It's plenty of time for the attacker for this attacker who could potentially cause this problem to come back and say, all right, well, now either they bought new gear and so the pen test doesn't matter anymore, or they stopped it from this password, but now they use this other really weak password or something like that, right? So I don't really buy that one that much as well.
Well, and those are all really great points, Dave, that I hadn't even really considered for the story, is that how often are they going to be scanning, and with what password database? So like they're going to miss a percentage because they might just not have it in their database. And then it's a point in, just like we do network security for enterprises, it's a point in time scan. Is this a continuing service? The other thing is that you got me thinking of is what if I block the scanner IP addresses? Like how much are they going to vary those IP addresses that they scan from? In most cases, like for example, when other vendors or projects scan the internet, they publish the IP addresses they're coming from. You can conceivably block those IP addresses. How is Japan going to handle that? I haven't seen that.
And it's funny. So I don't know Japanese, and I don't have any close friends who are Japanese. So I didn't do any official translation, but I did use Google Translate, and certain things do translate very well, like IP addresses. So they do list, I think, 5 or 6 different IPs.
Okay.
In the brief, but yeah, it's the great points here that you're bringing.
I
up.
like that you speak Japanese, but only when they're reading off an IP address.
Exactly right.
It's a fantastic skill, Dave.
Exactly. So all right, presuming that it's not actually related to the Olympics, that was just a theory that somebody had. So my personal opinion is, if you're pen testing 200 million IPs in the entire country of Japan, if you think about the average user, they're not, even if you alert them and say your password's bad, or you should change this and here's how to do it, the average user of technology understands how to use technology, but doesn't understand how to do things like that very often, right? And it's
you should change your password is password. You should change it. Now your password's password 123. It's way more secure.
Yeah, and I mean, if you recommend them go use some service, then go attack that service. Anyway, so there's a lot of problems associated with that. I do a little bit of reading in behavioral economics, and one of the theories there that they come up with is you try to remove barriers instead of telling people how to do something. So if you want somebody to do something, you say, well, all right, what are the things that are stopping you from doing that? And let's remove those. And in this case, you think about it, the people are going to go buy more stuff. Just the same problem with enterprise, right? You're going to buy more stuff. It's a point in time scan. If they buy stuff that still has default passwords or weak passwords, problem continues again. And so how do you actually solve the problem? It's not the end user, in my opinion here.
I agree. So I think what we're coming down to is this is a bad idea. Now that I think back to times I've covered stories like this, I think we usually come to the conclusion that it's not just a bad idea, but in the sense that it's not going to have much impact because of all the reasons that we listed.
Yeah, going to spend a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time for very little value.
Mm-hmm.
But now if you take this idea and you translate it over into the enterprise, right? The enterprise doesn't have the problem of, hopefully they don't have stuff exposed, though of course they will have some things exposed to the internet.
Sure.
But internal, right? How do you actually identify what your IoT devices are? Because you don't have a pen tester going around and scanning everything and figuring that out. No, that's a really hard problem. And there's actually startups that are built with that entire problem being the thing that they're solving. We do that as one of the things that we at Awake do. And I particularly did research on this relatively recently, and identified, just looking at how a device behaves on the network, how can we identify that it's of a certain device type, whether it's a IoT IP camera or it's a thermostat or something like that. And so once you identify the devices, that helps immensely, right? That gets you far along on the path. But then you need to figure out, okay, of these devices, which are the ones that I actually care about? Because you don't care about the 90 cameras in your organization. You care about the one that has a remote access tool installed on it. And so starting to think through these problems, we kind of, the way we approach network security at Awake is we figure out what these different devices are and point out the ones that are actually interesting, so that when an analyst gets into our system, they don't have to spend hours and hours looking at everything. They just see, oh, well, there's this one device that had remote access tool installed on it, and nobody else in the environment has this thing. And oh, by the way, it's an IP camera. And it's a really interesting way to bring value directly to the user.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of context, which is very useful to the analyst. And being an analyst, I was always like looking at logs and things, and I'm like, what is that? Like I say, okay, I see that. Like it's been sending some traffic, and I'm like, what is it? And then Dave, you've taken it to even the next level at Awake and said, okay, it's one thing to tell an analyst that these are cameras, right? But when they get into work the next day, tell them that one of these cameras is not acting like the others. Now that's the information they want, because I know we've got cameras. When I see the logs, I know, okay, now that's a camera. Yeah, we've got 90 of them. But when I come in tomorrow, tell me about that one that's doing something different. That's a great approach. You must have a lot of analysts having awakening moments, which is why
just a few.
Just a few. Dave, thank you so much for appearing on Hack Naked News. That was fantastic. Again, everyone can learn more about Awake Security by visiting securityweekly.com/awake. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.